you.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Aventura. We're so happy to have you here, Rabbi.
Thank you.
And again, we thank you so much. I personally can thank you. I've learned so much from your teachings. It gave me real practicality. Because remember, we can, you speak a lot about without action, all this is really going nowhere. So the first thing is obviously we're going to talk about Israel. Obviously, Rabbi, what practical tools, what do you recommend us doing practically for this? Obviously, for example, Rabbi Rush speaks about, dedicating a certain amount of time every day to giving to Kol Yisrael, actually praying. Because anytime there's a time of war, he says it's a time to blow the trumpets. So blowing the trumpets represents prayer. So he wants everybody to do 15 to 20 minutes of giving prayers to every Eretz Yisrael, and that's something that I've been doing and recommended, and I've seen major miracles just on that. Remember, one who prays for others gets answered first. So if you're praying and you're joining this effort, you are going to get answered first. So Rabbi, what do you think are some of the practical tools that we can? Seems like it's going to be a pretty much a major journey. It's going to be a process.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for hosting. Thank you for putting all this together. Of course, prayer, davening, tefillah is always essential and important, especially at a time like this. Chazal speak about the two types of soldiers that went out to battle. There were some battles, some that did the physical battle, and there were ones that were home doing the spiritual battle. There's a teaching from the Baal Shem Tov, that the Baal Shem Tov says that when there's war in the world, it's because there's a disconnect between Yesod and Malchut. Wow. Which means there's a disconnect between a type of consciousness of being and actuality. The Malchut, which is the container, the vessel of how we receive our life, is disconnected from the way we think about it. And in short, we always have to think about what is the war about. And everything in life has both a siba, a cause, and has a sibas, like the cause of the cause, the primary cause. Now the primary cause, because that's the will of Hashem, ain't no about it. But the siba, the cause on a physical plane, is that there was a lack of achdus in Klal Yisrael, a lack of unity in Klal Yisrael. We were weak as a people, mentally and spiritually, because of the infighting. It also created a lack of bitachon atzmi, trust in oneself, to know the value of who we are, what it means to be a part of Klal Yisrael. And we were vulnerable because of that. And part of the tikkun is to work on achdus. I just want to say one important thing. Whenever we talk about tikkun, we're not talking about someone else's tikkun. Because it's very nice to talk about what else someone else has to do. Sometimes catastrophes happen to Klal Yisrael, and people say it's because those people are not keeping Shabbos, and those people are. That is a very low level of spirituality. That is exactly what happened in the Garden of Eden and why they were rejected from the Garden of Eden. They were rejected from the Garden of Eden not because of what they did, but because they passed the responsibility to each other.
Wow.
That the man said, my wife told me, and the wife said, the snake told me, and the snake told me, someone else. And Hashem says, okay, you're out of here. Not because of what they did, because they didn't take responsibility. Living our life spiritually means to take responsibility for our lives and for the life that we see. So we talk about anything that we see in this world, we always have to ask our question is, what is my responsibility to this? How do I contribute to this event? What spiritually is something that I'm lacking that allow for this possibility to happen? And I think there are two things for every person to think about in terms of their own life. Achdus, what does it really mean to understand that Klal Yisrael, all the people of Israel, are a Gevia Achas, they're one being. It's not something that happens, the horrific events that happened on Simchas Torah is not something that happened to another person, not even to a brother and sister. It's actually something that happened to you. A limb of your body was cut off, and a limb of your body is now in Gaza. That's what we have to understand it. It's we, the collective. It's part of me. And therefore, the question always is, if it's part of me, what is my solution? Because I need to deal with it, and I'm taking full responsibility for it. Achdus, to recognize this idea, and b'tochen atzmi, self-respect, that we have to walk around with pride, with openness, with confidence, everything that was taken from us, maybe, or was wanted to be taken from us, because we didn't have that. This is what we have to reclaim. Not to cower to fear, but to be even stronger Jews, more proud Jews, and more openly Jews.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's a great. Rabbi, I was doing a class yesterday, and I was reading. Rabbi Rush spoke about the events in Meron, how somehow, we forgot about the 45 people that died in Meron. We forgot about the Surfside building that collapsed. We forgot about this. Like, how in the world did you just forget about this? Like, nobody's talking about that again.
Right.
Maybe that was the warning sign. Again, I'm just speculating, but maybe that's, I always say that, good times brings comfort, which bring bad times, and the bad times bring good times. But I was just thinking about that. The whole message of that time was we're stuck in it. We're not giving each other space, and somehow that momentum didn't last that long. And here we are today. And I was really thinking about that. It was a concept like, what did anybody change from that event? Has anybody changed? Could I say that you've changed from that Meron event? I mean, and same. It happened in Lag BaOmer, one of the happiest days of the year, with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. I mean, these events happening at these times. It's God is definitely sending us a message. How do you relate that event and this event?
Again, it's we're very, historically, as Jews, we're not supposed to really understand events. Because the moment you understand it and give it some type of rationalization, it's almost a sort of a justification. Like if I say, the reason why the Holocaust happened is because you just said that it had to happen.
Understood.
And the previous Lubavitcher of the Ayat said, we don't have to be God's lawyer. We don't have to give reasons why this happened. And I think what you're saying is much more powerful. The question is, when there's a little knock, are we getting it?
Right.
Or do we need someone to slam the door in our face? Like, at what point are we going to wake up and recognize that we have a purpose in this world? That Atam Eidai, Klal Yisrael, we have a mission in this world. We're created for a mission. And the world is waiting to hear what we have to say. And no one is saying it. Maybe you. But no one is saying it. Like, why? What is the Jew? What does he represent to the world? And why is he making so much noise? Why is a population that's not even 1% of the world population the head of every single news channel all over the world? Like, there's something about this. And so what? What is it? What are you? What do you stand for? This week's Parsha, we talked about Avraham Avinu. There was a mission statement. That the mission was L'manash Yitzav as one of his basic, because we were going to teach the world justice and righteousness and holiness and transcendence. And that's our purpose. We're supposed to be a Melechus Kohanim. We're supposed to be a kingdom of priests. And we have to own it.
Rabbi, you often speak about that the greatest teshuva is living with a higher consciousness. In a higher consciousness, we're not jealous of each other. In a higher consciousness, we don't speak bad about each other. In a higher consciousness, we are fearless. But when we fall in that lower consciousness, it seems to be that we point fingers outside. And that's something that, talk a little bit about higher consciousness. Why the solution, as we said many times, that when Mashiach comes, the world will be in a higher consciousness. There will be presence. Everybody will understand each other. Talk a little bit about how important it is for us to constantly fight to be in a higher consciousness, seeing everything for the best instead of becoming victims to a situation.
I think the natural tendency of man is to go to their comfort zone.
Right.
And the comfort zone of people is usually their lower selves. For whatever reason, that's like another conversation why this happens. And therefore, when faced with a certain thing, automatically we would rather go to the place where we're comfortable, even though it's destructive, than actually open ourselves up to something different, another way of seeing it. But when we live from a higher level of consciousness, everything just seems more right, more correct. You know, I'll give you an example, a very simple example. We're not talking about a person sitting and praying all day or meditating all day. A very simple example, you know, if you're marrying off a child or at a birth of a child, and the person that you really dislike walks into the room, and you haven't spoken to this person for many years, and you're dancing at your son's wedding or your daughter's wedding, and they grab your hand and say Mazel Tov. You're gonna just grab their hand and dance.
Right.
All the narishkeit, all the small levels of pettiness is just gonna fall away. We have that quality. We know what that means. We tap into it once in a while. What it means to be in a higher place when trivialities and nonsense and stupidity and fights and this really small things, pettiness, really takes hold of us. So everyone has it. It's a matter of rediscovering it and reconnecting to that place that's who we truly are.
I think after October 7th, 80% of people's problems went away.
Right.
Whatever you thought had a problem somehow was not so important anymore. So that's also teaching us that our perspective was in the wrong place. You know, the ego blocks perspective and you know, makes us self-centered. I think you spoke about it in the month of Cheshvon. The work is to really fight the snake consciousness, which is falling into depression and being self-centered. Talk about the snake consciousness. What is the practicality of the snake consciousness? And talk about, give us practicality, as you said when we say Modim, when we pray, the bending over but standing up.
Correct. This is a very big topic, but I would just say that the snake in the Torah, the way the Torah describes the snake is that it's an external voice. There's like an inner voice that Adam has and Adam and Chava have, and then there's an external voice. And the snake represents the external voice. The external voice is the world of fantasy and imagination. And it's something it's layered over onto our consciousness. It's not actually something we think about. It's not created from within ourselves. That's a redemptive consciousness. That's a redemptive imagination. But an unredeemed imagination is you are bombarded continuously with subliminal messages, continuously. Like just walking down the street, you're hearing things, you're seeing things, and that creates a certain narrative to you. And then you live in that place, that's snake consciousness. And that's why it's full of fear and uncertainties and worry and anxieties, because this was not something that's coming from the inner core.
Beautiful.
This was created. We have to reclaim our imagination. That's part of the real spiritual work, is reclaiming our imagination. Reclaiming our imagination means to choose to imagine, to use your chushatzi, your power of imagination. So when you learn something, for example,
Right.
Don't just let it be in the left part of the brain, like information, which is excellent. You have to know what you have to know. But then say, how could I actually imagine this truth in my life? And the more you train yourself, the more you become, the way the Rambam, Maimonides describes this, is that you become the rider of the horse.
Beautiful.
As opposed to the horse riding you, which is your imagination.
You spoke about in some of your interviews that when we actually look at these pictures, it actually blemishes and it affects our souls.
Absolutely.
So there's actually, even if you try to, like, you know, some of these pictures, even if you try to, like, you know, not pay attention to it, and there's a deep effect. There's an effect that and I didn't even know until I heard that there's actually what affects us when we are looking at these pictures. And why is a picture different than just hearing it on the news?
Because hearing, the difference between an image and something that you're hearing is immediately translated by you.
Okay.
Your mind is right away listening to what you're hearing and giving it a certain understanding of what you're hearing, right? Because every person has a certain filter that they're filtering that. But imagery, especially when you're bombarded with imagery, you don't have enough process time to actually decide, I'm going to put this into this particular context, and I'm able to label it in a certain way how I want to receive it. So it just enters the way it enters. And if it's a very violent, God forbid, image, or something that's other types of imagery, it affects us. And then people walk around, angry.
Right.
And like, why am I angry? I have a good life. Well, if you stop taking angry images into your mind, you won't be angry. Or why do I have these terrible thoughts? Well, you allow these thoughts to enter, and they're very subliminal. So to be aware of what the intake is very important.
Because one step is we do have to create a voice, and second, we have to also create a tzimtzum, also not too much, not to get too involved, because obviously there has to be a speaking up, obviously. This is not against.
Yeah. This is not against. No, on the contrary. Of course, we have to speak up.
Right.
No, we have to speak up. This is part of the redemption, the geula consciousness. A geula consciousness is that exile consciousness is I'm just receiving what life presents to me, and I'm always on the run. And a geula consciousness is I don't run anywhere.
Talk about visualization. So, for example, you've said many times in your books that the key to redeeming, the key to redemption was a change from catastrophe to visualization, to all of a sudden, imagining the best case scenario, which I've used many, many times. Talk about what times are good for that. What should the person do? Should he just picture the event? I just picture events. For example, I use music. For example, I'm picturing myself going back to Israel and going on a vacation, everything being fine, and hearing good news. I use music, I use visualization. Give everybody some tools on what kind of visualization should people do. Should they use music? Should they use...
the real answer.
How to invoke emotion,
yeah.
so we can bring it out and actually believe in it.
I don't know if every person is exactly the same. Not every person operates the same way.
Okay.
Some people are very visual. Some people audible. Some people are through sound. Some are very tactile. Every person has to know. You have to know who you are. The beginning of the foundation of any type of higher level of consciousness living is actually knowing yourself.
Okay.
Right. So you have to know who you are. What really resonates in your being. If you are a visual person, right, that really evokes things for you. I would say probably the best times are probably in the early morning, before the world becomes muddied with other imagery. The atmosphere of the universe gets a little bit more dense as the day goes on. That's why, in Sukkot, for example, it talks that Sukkot is the idea of Yiska, which is like Ruach HaKodesh. That person has higher intuition because you cleanse the air with the Sukkah, with the lulav. So it's you're an easier receptacle to receive. So I think early morning, late at night, when the world is sleeping, is actually a good time. And also, it's important to, if you do visualization, to do it completely, and also to end it. So let's say, for example, a person is doing a visualization of themselves being healed.
Right.
Let's say even physical healing. That should be done as well. Let's say a person, but we'll use the metaphor of physical healing. Let's say a person is thinking about, they have a cut, right? So you can visualize the cut congealing, the body healing itself, or you can, let's say, visualize you're getting stitches, for example, but take it to the end. Now imagine the doctor that stitched you putting his and walking out the room. You have to
the actual physical steps.
Correct. You have to go through the whole process.
Right.
Because otherwise it's just a visual. But if you materialize the visual into its conclusion, that's very important for any type of visualization. Like you say, you're visualizing yourself going to Israel on vacation.
Right.
Visualize yourself already coming back and you're already home.
Wow.
Like, so go through the whole process of that. And then, of course, if you're a person that's also audible, you can add music and you can add,
Right.
or tactile, or movement, whatever really evokes and allows you to have that full experience.
You know, I find that visualization is a great way to see where you're at. Because if you can't even picture it, that means you're not even believing in it. And that allows you at least to recognize where the blockage is. So I've had situations in my life where I can't even see it. And if I can't even see it, that means there's a problem. I don't believe in it. So it's you shouldn't get frustrated when you're doing these spiritual exercises and these visualizations. You should just get data. For example, if it's hard for you to do it, that means there's a lot of resistance there. So I don't look at it as something bad. I go, okay, I need to go into the breath. I need to go clear the thing. So I promise you it works. Visualization works. Rabbi Nachman said it in his teachings, lesson 62. He says, if you visualize it, and it has to be, like the rabbi says, complete, to the extent of every single detail. And I've had people getting married. I told them, tell me exactly the hotel you're going into, where you're going to book, pretend you're doing the daily. And I've seen tremendous results. Because isn't visualization emunah?
Yep, that's part of the, yes.
It's emunah, isn't it?
Yeah, the Rabbi Shab writes that emunah is to see.
Emunah is to see it.
Emunah is to see it, yeah.
Beautiful.
You see it.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, like you say, like resistance. You know, Klal Yisrael, the beginning of the whole redemption process to get out of Egypt, they have to visualize themselves getting out of Egypt. This is why the first mitzvah that they receive in the Torah, even before they leave Egypt, is to sanctify the new moon.
It's very important, this concept, and in my own life, I've seen this. When you are visualizing every single day, you become very sensitive because you can go into these spaces. So what happens is if you know you're going to visualize the next morning, you're not going to watch a horror film the night before. Because that horror film is not going to allow you to visualize. Does that make sense? It's extremely important that it's not so much the visualization. First, sometimes you have to cut what's not allowing you to get to these places. Because if the place itself, if you're getting so much static from other things, you can't go into that space. And let me explain to you. Once you get into that space of visualization, that is the biggest addiction. It is the biggest addiction that you can go and actually wake up, get into a space, visualize something, and it comes true. It's a whole different relationship to God. It's a whole different mindset. Versus, I didn't put the work in. The same thing. We don't think about it's not working. It's very simple. I'm not putting in the work in. And that the mindset of I'm not putting in the work doesn't make you a victim. It tells you got work to do. Put the work in. And that usually has done tremendous things. I visualized so many things in my life. But again, sometimes if I can't get to that space, I'm visualizing the Hebrews. I'm visualizing this. My head is not in the space where I want to be. So it's extremely important. You have to be careful what you're watching, and these things, like the rabbi said, affect your head. So there's got to be some cutting. We can't go to the gym with 2,000 calorie smoothie and expect to get results. So we really have to be serious. It has to be a serious thing. And it works. If you use music, it works 1,000%. Rabbi Nachman spoke about it. All Hasidus is teaching about it. And I think we're all yearning for that redemption where we can visualize something. We're all yearning for that.
I just want to say that, you mentioned watching horror films before going to sleep.
Right.
I think
which is CNN, obviously.
Yeah. Right. But I think it's super important to know this, that because when a person is going into a dream state, they're actually going into a visualized universe. It's super important to enter into that place with positive imagery.
Right.
You have to enter sleep in the right space. You can't go to sleep angry, anxious, it's clear.
Beautiful.
But even you can't go to sleep with any type of negative imagery. You should never fall asleep watching something that is negative, ever. Mm-hmm. You should always have a way that you're entering into sleep. You're choosing how you're entering to sleep. You're saying, I'm entering to sleep. As I'm falling asleep, I'm imagining, I'm thinking about this. And then when you enter the sleep, you actually create it, and then it becomes manifested.
It's so true because, we wake up completely different. You wake up, there's days that you wake up, you're more spiritual those days, you wake up with energy.
Yeah.
And there's other days that your soul is just not refreshed. You wake up exactly the same. You wake up with you're hungover from yesterday's situations. So you're saying that's because we're not going to sleep the right way.
We're not going to sleep correctly. If you want to wake up like the Hasidic masters used to say, if you want to wake up like a mensch, if you want to wake up like a person, you got to go to sleep like a mensch. So if you go to sleep like a mensch, a person should never drop to bed. Like this whole thing is you're so tired and just conk. It's not good. You have to enter. It's a process. It's a work. It's an avodah. Sleep is not just there because you can't function 24 hours a day. Sleep itself has inherent value. So if you have to enter into sleep, maybe make a bracha. That's a hamapli. Make a bracha. Say Shema. You're supposed to enter into that state, and then you feel like your soul is entering, and then you can think what that means and enter into a positive place. Then you can wake up differently.
Right, because you told, many times, Rav Nachman, all the sages are telling us that we cannot get the prophecy without joy. Like joy is the biggest vehicle for prophecy.
Correct.
So
Correct.
if we're not getting the message, if we're not getting the visualizations, because we're not in joy. We're not in joy. Rabbi, let's talk a little bit about relationships. It seems to be, Rabbi Nachman has said many times that our life is a war, and what we see outside is what's inside of us. He says if we're married, the war is within our in-laws, the war is with our family. If we're single, the war is in our head. But there will always be a war. The only thing you could do is not live there. These are exactly his words. After hearing that, I came to a level of acceptance that any time that we have a little peace, it's a 3-day break, but it's not a permanent situation that we're going to have guaranteed peace. That's what he said. Talk a little bit about. He basically is telling us that what you see on the outside world is happening in the inside of your head. And the days you feel angry, there's a Hamas energy inside of you. He didn't say Hamas energy, but he says there's a certain nation that's overpowering you. And we know there's 70 nations, and these 70 nations have different characteristics. So he says that we're always going to be at some kind of a war. I don't remember the last time somebody called me up and says, I love my mother-in-law, what can we do for them tomorrow? There's always something. There's always a family member. This one's not talking to that one. This one's not talking to this one. I've yet to see a case where everybody's just on, everybody's getting along. What should we do? How should we deal with it? You spoke about equanimity. What do you suggest in a modern world with these relationship issues?
It's a loaded question because
it's a little frustration coming out.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. There's a lot of.
I'm doing a little venting myself.
Okay, fine. I got it.
Okay.
It's because there's a lot of layers here.
Or just talk about relationships and what to expect. I feel like sometimes in my practical, in general, maybe our expectation is supposed to be that we're supposed to be, 90% or 80% happy, and that 10%, if it's more than 10%, there's a problem. Are our expectations out of whack, or what do you think is happening from your personal perspective or what you've seen?
I believe that there's stages in relationships.
Okay.
And you are going to get to a place where you're going to live in perfect harmony with your spouse. You will.
In perfect harmony?
Yeah. Yeah. You will. You will. You will.
Please send more wine, please.
Yeah.
Let it go in through. Let it go through.
You will. You will. You will. You just have to be patient. There is.
In Olam Haba or Olam Hazeh?
In Olam Hazeh. In Olam Hazeh. It's not immediate. Things, we have a certain expectation. This is where the expectation happens. the Kotzker Rebbe once said that people want to change. Everyone wants to change. They want to grow. But they want to change overnight. And they want to have a good night's sleep that night as well. Which means we lost our sense of process. We want immediate results for everything. We live in a world that's everything's fast. Everything is immediate and dispensable. You have a cup of water, it's plastic, you throw it out. I'm not getting to the whole environmental issue, but that's the way people live. Which is, we live with, is this working for me? Yes, okay. Not, I'll move on. Right? That's the nature of the way we live, because that's the mindset. And we lost the art of process. That things actually evolve in stages.
Beautiful.
And therefore, a marriage, like any development, goes through different stages. There is the stage where when you're young, and you're younger in the marriage, some say 10 years, but there's different ways, and even the Chazal, different ways to think about it, is that in the beginning of a marriage, of course, there's two different people have two different ambitions, two different desires, different way of thinking, and there's always constantly clash. And then you have to figure out, like, if it's over 50% positive, then you're doing pretty good.
So your number is 50%.
Yeah.
Got it.
In the beginning. But then as you grow older, I'll give you a metaphorical example, and then like a literal example. There is the word Bereshis. The word Bereshis has three nekudas, three vowels. So Be, which is a shva, right, which is a dot on top of the dot. Then it has a tseir. Are you familiar with this? Then it has a tseir, which is two dots next to each other. And then shiz is with a chirik, which is one dot. And that's the way relationships work. It starts off top down, which is called achar bachar, back to back. Which is, I don't know you, you don't know me, we're gonna try to make this work. Right. Slowly, from this encounter, slowly the relationship starts moving in a way that we're both parallel to each other. You ever saw older people? This is just an image, but you see like older people, I guess there's a lot of older people here. Right. They're sitting on like a porch on a chair looking out.
No, they're on the internet. No.
What?
They're not on the porch anymore, they're on the internet.
Not the older people. But you know what that is? You know what that image is? It's like, right. I'm in dialogue with you for 50 years, and at some point you're actually sitting next to me and we're looking together. It changes the dynamic. We're not just in conversation, which is healthy, which is a face-to-face relationship. And sometimes you think one and you think the other way, and therefore we have to work things out. But eventually, over time, if you have patience and commitment means it's not disposable. This is like a person that I'm going to build my life with. Through thick and thin, we're going to work this out. Of course, if it's working, right? Obviously. And we're having a lot of better times than worse. I'm getting committed to this person, and over time, eventually you're going to end up sitting like a tzeret, side by side, looking out the horizon, and then you become a chirik. You actually become one. And that's the perfect harmony, where you actually you share the same dreams, you share the same ambitions, and through the marriage and the stages and the process, there'll be times that you have one way, she'll have another way, and then you'll figure it out together. Like, what is the best for the family? What is best for the children? And slowly you'll start morphing into this collective vision, and I think you'll have harmony.
Rabbi, what do you think? It's a very common, and I've seen this myself, I've seen this with the people, that the person you married, there's a good chance they're going to change. And there's a good chance you're going to change. So, obviously we're all trying to, fit the perfect box in the perfect situation. But usually, people think, this is not the person I married. What do you do when you see a change or a person committed? And this is a common question I get. What do you do when you see a change where a person committed that they're going to keep a certain amount of, they're going to keep Shabbat, they're going to keep a certain amount of Nida, and all of a sudden they say, you know what, not interested anymore. Is it a time for divorce? Is it a time for patience? Is it a time, what does a person do? And that has become a very typical example today.
Okay. Obviously that's
obviously it's a loaded question.
No, it's loaded because it's also, you have to tailor the question to each individual. It can't be answered
Okay.
Like as a but I would say like this. Remember, rule number one in spirituality is always me. It's never them. There is no them. It's always about me. Always about me.
Right.
Always about me. So the question is like this. There's a Talmudic teaching that says that the first spouse that you marry is destiny. Baska labaska, is the heavenly voice says this is the person you're going to marry. The second one, which is not in sequence, but the second one you're going to marry is going to be Lefi Maisa, according to your actions. And the deeper understanding of that, it's actually talking about the same marriage.
Oh, wow.
You marry the person because that's what Hashem wanted, especially if you're young. Like, no one really knows why they're marrying this person. They really, you think you do, but when you're in 20s, you have no idea. Because that's what Hashem wanted, this is the person I want to share my life with.
You're young and stupid, which is the best.
Exactly, so Hashem's power can come through you without actually your ego getting in the way. Okay, you're living your marriage, and it's destiny, and 10 years later, you should know, it's Lefi Masam, it's according to your actions.
Wow.
The person is actually a reflection of you. Now, we're not talking about an extreme example, the person is abusive. I'm not.
The guy or the girl? Which?
Both. Each one is a reflection of each other. If I see something in my spouse, that's a reflection of me. The way I acted for the last 10 years produced that. And the way she acted the last 10 years produced this. And each one has to take responsibility in the marriage and say, what did I do in the last, to turn this person into a person that doesn't want to keep Shabbos? Wow. Instead of saying it's that person's fault. Remember, it's never them, it's always you. Them is the snake in the garden. Adam says, she told me, she said, the snake told me, everyone's passing. This is the epitome of Eitzah. This is the epitome of stress. Right. Not taking responsibility. So you're living for many years, the other person is your reflection. Again, we're not talking about abusive situations, that extreme. But a regular situation is, you have a pretty decent marriage, the person is reflecting you.
And you're saying this is the same thing with women and men in general?
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. The woman reflects the man reflects the woman.
Put that in the record, please. Because usually the men they take the hit on this one.
Yeah?
Usually the men take the hit on this one.
So the men think that it's their fault, but the women don't?
If the man was giving them enough light,
right,
the moon would reflect right back.
Yeah,
but if the man is acting like a moon, then you have two moons in the house.
Yeah, but the moon can be shining her light.
So she has to also
own it. Everyone has to own it.
Everybody has to own it.
You have to own your life.
Beautiful. And what recommendations, for example, where's the first step in that situation in relationships? What do you recommend them? Let's say a situation where, again, this is not my personal stuff.
Right.
I'm just talking in general.
Right.
When a person has to pick between their mother and their wife, this is a common thing where you get this answer very often. You get this question very often. I want to respect my mother, but my wife is not talking to my mother. And if he doesn't take her side, he's sleeping in the garage. And yet he wants to respect her mother by having kibbud abayim. So these are real questions that I get. So it's a good time for me to ask these questions.
That is a real question.
What does a person do? What should he do? Should he try to find a resolution? Whose side he should take? Etc. I'm sure somebody else has these questions in the room. I'm feeling.
You know, I once observed. This was many years ago. It was someone's house. And it was a young couple, and the wife did something like clumsy, I guess, like if she spilled or something, and the guy like winked to me, or made with her head, and then I realized,
bad one.
That is terrible. You are your wife's side, right? That's what you're doing now. You're not. Your commitment. You know, we can have a commitment to the past or a commitment to the future. We should always commit for the future. When we're building a home, your number one priority is to build your home. And part of the building of the home is to have a good relationship with your spouse, a good relationship with your children. Now, if your parents, for some reason, can't do that in the relationship, then unfortunately, it's too bad.
Besides doing the practicality of becoming the change you want to be, is it my job or my spouse's job to fix the other person's spirituality? am I okay saying, listen, this is where I'm at in my life. If you don't want to change, I have to respect you. Do I have to attempt to change the person? Do I have to? How much space is a person supposed to do? Because a lot of people think that it's their project to change another person.
No.
It's not your project
No.
to change another person.
No. No.
Okay.
Absolutely no. The reason why you're living with this other person is to change yourself.
Got it.
That's what you have to realize.
Beautiful.
It's always about yourself.
That should solve 50% of the marriage problems in here, right? I think the men are not moving too much here.
They're not smiling either.
Rabbi, you speak. You've created. You have books on breathing. You have books on meditation, and something was very fascinating where we really went into the connecting to the breath. Is you spoke about that. Our Rav Kaplan also says this, mirrors this exactly what you say, that one of the best ways to connect from your subconscious mind to your conscious mind is through the breath. And obviously, 90% of our lives are from our subconscious. What practical tools do you have for that? Again, the rabbi just said, the rabbi has books on visualization, the rabbi has books on sound, the rabbi has, it's very strange that you see these practicality and how you're really bringing these things out. What kind of breathing methods do you do practically? When do you breathe? And what do you recommend?
Did you realize your mic went off when you asked me that question? And the answer, I'm not going to say what I do, because that's
okay. Just in general,
that's my story.
Talk about the breath, and talk
yes.
about the importance of breathing,
yes.
talk about
everyone knows about the importance of breathing, because everyone breathes, right? You need to breathe to live. I think that's a reason why it's the most accessible spiritual practice, breathing, because it's something you have to do anyways. Like you tell a person, I want you to sit now and visualize something, but I don't. I want you to sit and hear different sounds and chant. I don't. But breathing, you're walking down the street, you're breathing. So might as well make it into something that's deeper. The whole process of creation, the way divine light, Hashem's light comes into this world, is a way of inhale and exhale. This comes from the Ari, but Baal Shem Tov speaks about this Hevel Elyon, this supernal breath of life, which is that the life force enters into this world, which is like the external exhale into this world, and then the life is returned. Everything is constantly being refreshed. The world is constantly being renewed. When you say that the world every moment is a new creation, right. By definition it means that every other moment is a world destruction, right? Because if it's being created, it means it was uncreated and now it's being created again. The uncreated process is the way the world is returning into the divine inhale. And then every time we take an inhale, we're actually breathing in the divine exhale.
Wow.
And that we're circling energy upwards. And we're connected with everything. Just a very simple awareness of breath allows us to expand ourselves to beyond the self.
Rabbi, you have 12 books on the months, and I think they're fascinating.
Thank you.
They're just fascinating. The rabbi is strongly recommended on Amazon. I believe they're on Amazon.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
The rabbi has a book on every single month, the energy of the month. And not only talks about the Kabbalah of the month, but it talks about the practical tools, what to expect in a month. And I think that has tremendously changed a lot. Because what you expect in a month already, if you see, like for this example, this month is a lot of, it feels like there's an energy of resilience, that we're always falling and we're getting up, and we're getting up. It's Scorpio, energy. Talk about how to bring the month into you. What do you do practically when all of a sudden Cheshvon comes and that energy comes to the day?
You know what's really fascinating about this conversation, I'll tell you what,
yes.
is that whether we're conscious or not, everyone feels it.
Right.
It's not a superimposed metaphysical truth that you're trying to create, saying this month is this, but I don't really feel it, but that's the truth. Everyone feels it. It's a transition period. Everyone feels the weather changing, maybe not in Florida so much, but everyone feels the weather changing, the days are getting shorter. It feels like, the holidays, like the Yom Tov, the New Year's beginning. Everyone feels this type of entering into this morbid type of place, and then the strength to get up. So I think the months on their own, there's when the Kabbalists talk about what the energy of every month is, what the letter of the month is, what the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, they're just revealing to you what you're already feeling. They're giving you tools to show you, why am I feeling so down but needing to like push myself, resilient? Why am I feeling like hopeful when Kislev comes?
Amazing.
So it's giving you tools and saying, this is what's going on, this is what's happening on a metaphysical level, and this is the way Hashem is talking to us.
Incredible. One of the things he said about Cheshvon this month is that we're not getting any arousal from above. So any happiness that we have today is because you put an effort. I mean, you're just not going to wake up and say, hey, what a great day today.
Right.
If you did something, you worked out, you did this, you did that, that is going to give you some kind of joy. There's nothing that's going to give you, it's not coming from above. So it's an amazing thing to recognize that sometimes you have to push a little harder. And it's nothing wrong with you. It's just you're dealing with a certain amount of energies that the energy's there, and you have to
push through. Yeah, this is the month to push forward, to get up. You know, I talk about the snake because one of the interesting things about the snake is that you have to break snake consciousness through bowing down a modem. Right, that's literally the spine. What you do in modem is you bow down, but then it says that turns into the snake, which represents this type of energy that goes through the spine. But it says that when you get up from modem, you also have to get up like a snake, like a chavia, which means you have to transform snake.
Wow.
And transforming snake is the idea. That's why snake is the same numeric value as Mashiach, because the transformation of snake is the redemption of imagination is Mashiach. Because the reason why we're not Tzaddik Rakai, one of the great tzaddikim, says that we used to serve God with action in the Beit HaMikdash time, right? We brought an offering, physical offering, and then the neshama Faras Sasenu, then we speak about the offering, which is dibur. But it says in order for Mashiach to come, we actually have to redeem our imagination.
Wow.
And it's actually happening, which means the world is moving from a world, this is part of the unfortunate and the fortunate part of what's happening in the world. People are starting to learn, people are learning more visually than audible today. Which is, it's a movement towards the visual, which is really a messianic idea if it's done correctly.
Rabbi, what do you think the role of a woman is today as far as, just like Mitzrayim, the women were responsible for the liberation, yet also the women are the ones that spend the most time on social media. So are we using that energy correctly? Are we using, and I've seen this again, I many times I ask people, we're black and white here. We're not going to sugarcoat anything, obviously. But there's a lot of, when you're comparing your life to other people's lives, and you see the perfect couple, you're not seeing if the guy got hit with a coconut before, you're not seeing if the guy threw a shoe at her, you're just seeing the highlights of a perfect world. And all of a sudden, people are buying into this. And when you're buying into this picture, all of a sudden you feel like, what's the point of praying? They're doing nothing, and look at me. I don't have that. So that's making you despair. You compare, you're going to despair. And then that visualization cannot come out. And I've seen a lot of people. I've said, hey, why? If you're not married, did you picture this? Did you picture that? No, I can't. How long are you on social media? 5 hours. You have 5 hours to be on social media, but you don't have 10 minutes to manifest? So we have to get the priorities straight. And I've told people, I want you to 20 minutes, 30 minutes, cut this out, and your life will dramatically change. Because I recognize even myself, when I'm too involved and I don't feel like doing anything.
If I had it my way, I would ban all these social medias.
Yeah.
I think the reason why people are walking around depressed, they don't know this, especially the youth. I don't know if you know what's going on even just in America, which I'm not even talking about Jews, just talking about America. They're talking about the highest level of suicide in the history of the country. And it's all young kids, and it's all social media. Right. It creates, if you are at social media, I don't know why you have to be out there, but let's say you need to for some reason. If you
they have to see my post.
Okay, fine. So if they're on social media, let's see Gedale's post. Do not do it in the morning. You have to carve out time for this. The foundation of the day is the most important.
Right.
the first thoughts that you have for the day, the first words that you speak, the first action you do, is the foundation of your entire day.
Right.
So you have to make sure you wake up in the morning and you do not turn on your phone for at least a few hours. Just start your day as a mensch.
Right.
Go to sleep. Do not fall asleep looking at social media because you're going to have depressing dreams and you're going to wake up depressed the next morning.
And most of these things are not real. Like you're buying into
Nothing
unattainable.
is
It's
real.
not real. So you're getting upset about something that's not even real.
Correct. This is an algorithm that's trying to gain a dopamine to keep you addicted to this nonsense. But stop it. Like why the madness? Certainly for young people, and this is horrifying. What's going on?
I have seen personally when I am on next thing I'm just not focused.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you wake up, you don't feel like doing it, and
Correct.
it does affect you. So if you really just look at the practicality, you eat a heavy meal, you're not going to expect to have energy to work out the next morning.
Absolutely.
So it really works on the same thing. So your imagination has to be completely clear.
A few hours in the morning.
Clear these things out.
A few hours in the morning, a few hours in the evening.
It's so important
Absolutely
just
not.
to cut certain areas before you go to sleep and the time you wake up, just because that's a space to create. Instead of creating, we're reacting. And what are you reacting to? The same nonsense as everybody else is reacting to. So it's extremely important that wealth is really not giving energy away. And a sign of wealth is that my energy is not giving. You had a whole class on equanimity, which is living the inside out, not the outside in, which I thought that concept was amazing.
Yeah.
Like living in the time of presence. Talk a little bit about living in the inside out, not the outside in.
I mean, we constantly have a choice how we're going to live our lives. Certainly if someone tells you something, and the story of Canaan and the story with Noach is that whole story is that the need to impress or to need to be impressed is living like a slave. Choosing to live in the response to other people's perceptions of who I am or what my reality is, which is the way of living from the outside in. Or if you wake up in the morning and it's dark outside or it's raining and you say, today's not going to be a good day, the weather dictated to you how your day is going to be. But living from the inside out means that I am choosing how my day is going to be. And I wake up in the morning and I say, my Dani, thank you Hashem for giving me this beautiful day, and for turning my soul, and for believing in me. And this is going to be a wonderful day. This is going to be the best day of my life. Every day you should say that. And it will.
So the solution is not to avoid, like you hear this mindset today, avoid toxic people, avoid this, avoid that. No, just deal with the people, but see how you can react differently. Is that the message? Or is it to put a boundary and say, get lost?
There are two types of toxic people.
Okay.
There are certain
Because
toxic.
today we're putting toxic on anything.
Exactly.
Anything's toxic.
Everything's toxic. But I'm talking about like the low level of toxicity
Right.
is manageable.
Okay.
People that you can manage, we always have a choice in every experience that we have in this world, whether we're the recipient of the experience or the creator of the experience.
Beautiful.
Every moment. I'm having conversations with you, I'm choosing what I'm going to say, and I'm choosing how I'm interpreting what you're saying. So I'm a person has always choice whether you are the effects of life or the cause of life. Either the creator or being affected by it. And if there are certain people in your life that you can manage, which means they're toxic, but they need to be around. I don't know, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's even some in-law or something, just for the harmony of the family. You have to deal with this person. Then you say, I'm going to enter into that place, choosing to be in a good mood, even though the person I know is going to say X, Y, and Z. Then there are things that are so toxic that I don't have the strength to control myself to do that. Maybe you will eventually. But if you don't have now, then stay away.
Rabbi Nachman often says, he says many times that by focusing on the good points, which is the godliness in the person, I can physically change the person through my energy. What do you think about that? Just physically looking at them and seeing the good in them, I can physically change that person by sending them good energy. What is your concept of good energy in Kabbalah? Is it an or makif? How do you relate to good energy? How do you bring that down into a practicality? What physically happens when I'm when I'm judging people positively? I hate to ask you such a complicated question.
It's a good question because it also goes into the opposite with the ayin hara, like
Correct.
someone projects an ayin hara at you. So it's important to understand that every encounter has two. So
Okay.
there's the negative perpetuator or the positive perpetuator of that, whether it's a visual or a word, and then there's a recipient of it.
Okay.
The Gemara says, when it talks about ayin hara, that if a person feels they have an evil eye in them, or they feel they can be affected by an evil eye, they should put their hand, like wrap their hands around their body,
Right.
like make a loop around your body.
It's a Sephardic crowd. They know all the tools.
Okay, fine. And you should say that I come from Zara Shalios, I come from Kassin, I come from Kassin.
What exactly is the move so you can show everybody?
The thumb and the thumb.
The two thumbs?
Yeah, thumb and the thumb.
Got it. Like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Why specifically that?
Okay. So what you're doing basically, you're metaphorically creating a loop around your body.
Wow.
You created your own loop. And you're basically saying, I'm like Yosef, like Joseph, and you can't affect me because I am protected.
It's incredible.
And the moment you do that, even if a person is looking at you with a very negative eye and a jealous eye and trying to affect you, you just protected yourself. So in order to receive a person's energy, you have to be open to receive it. For negative, and that's also for positive.
Wow.
The same thing also with positive. When you look at another person and you see the Nekudat HaTov, you see the
Good point.
the good point within the other person, and you allow them to see it. You say, I know that you're going through a hard time, and I know that you're really struggling with this X, Y, and Z, but you're a wonderful listener, or you're actually really, really super sensitive. You give them like a compliment, and they believe it because it's who they truly are. It allows them to reveal that in a much more open way, and that to expand into all levels of their being.
Back to the question about the ayin hara thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Why are you associating with Yosef Atzadik? Was it because he was constantly happy?
Yosef Atzadik
What makes him merit that he should be the one that protects people from ayin hara?
because Yosef Atzadik never, there's a teaching that says, you say this every morning in davening, you say, Al tigu b'Mashiachai. Don't touch the Mashiachs, the Messianic, the Messiahs, the Mashiach. And Chazal say, the Gemara says that Mashiach is Eluf Negesh B'Israel, the children. That Chazal say that who's the Mashiach? Who are we talking to? We're talking about children. Now, why children Mashiach? Because you ever had a child? A child is a person that lives with dreams. I had a child, he's already an adult, had a child when he was 10 years old, or maybe 7, 8 years old. He bought a scepter, he says he wants to be the king of the universe. And I said, that's amazing. Wow, you want to be the king of the world. And then there was some member, I'm not going to say who, of the family, not the immediate family, once heard him say this, that's not a job. You can never be the king of the universe, that's not a thing. And I'm saying, I'll take it with Mashiach. Don't touch the child's dreams. Child wants to be the king of the world. Life is going to smack him. He's going to grow older. But when he has the pure innocence of imagination and dream, let him have the dream. Yosef, you want to know why Yosef? Yosef is a young little kid, teenager, and he has a dream. He's a little shepherd boy in Canaan, and he has a dream that he's going to be the most powerful person in the world. And his brother said, what? You're nobody. How are you becoming this great king? His father protected that dream. His father held that dream. His father said, don't tell your brothers because they're not going to understand. But I know I'm going to hold that dream for you. And that's what he became. He was never affected by other people trying to put him down. He knew that he was destined for greatness. Amazing. And every person, by the way, is destined for greatness. And the reason why most people don't reach greatness in their life is because they never had someone that told them that you can be great. And if anything, when a child, they said, you're asking weird questions. You're not really fitting in. Something's wrong with you. And all the kid was is a creative child. Right. And this has tremendous imagination. But when you have a child, celebrate that. Shomer Sadavar, protect that, hold it.
I think people fear being great because of being judged when they fall. They can't handle the judgment.
I think people also fear being great because they know they could be great, and then they don't have an excuse of why they're so mediocre. Because if you know that you can really be bigger than your problems, then why aren't you?
Right.
So the best thing is saying, I can't. I'm a struggler. This is who I am. I am a fighter, and I lose so many times. No, you're not. Who told you that? Who told you that story?
Right.
You want to tell yourself that story because you don't want to live greater. Because if you are going to live greater, I'm beyond the problems. Watch, I never get angry.
Back to this concept of becoming the new you.
Yeah.
You've mentioned many times, I've almost memorized your books because the teachings are just phenomenal. I've used many of the tools. You said that in order for a person to change, he requires 3 steps, right? Havdalah, Hamtaka, Havdalah, and, Hana, Havdalah, Hamtaka, which means submission, separation, and sweetening. Explain, give us this concept in a practical way, these 3 steps, what people do. How people can get to these, what does it mean on a practical level?
Anything you do, very, very concise, everything that you do, own it.
So that's the submission.
That's submission. I own what I did. I'm taking full responsibility. It's not his fault, that fault, the other fault. It's my fault. I perpetuate this actions. I own it. Number 2, I separate myself from it. It's not who I am, it's what I did. You must make that distinction, because if you say you are what you did and you did something that was negative, then you are negative. You're not negative. You're a good person that did a negative thing. So separation is, first I own it, submission, then I separate, which means that's not who I am, it's what I've done. And then the next highest level is sweetening, where I can look back at all my mistakes and say, it actually made me the person that I am now.
Beautiful.
And that's the transformation of something that's negative to something positive.
Beautiful. So submission, and what do you think people have the hardest stage in? Probably either submission or separation?
That's
not,
the question.
Not admitting to the issue?
I think a lot of people
or identifying themselves with the problem?
I think, first of all, a lot of people don't want to identify that they're the perpetuator of their lives. Like, if a person's life is not working out, they're going to blame everybody besides themselves.
Correct.
And then once they own it, then they start feeling like a loser.
Okay.
Right? Because then the second stage is, okay, so I do own my life. And okay, let's say I want to make money. Let's say it's a very trivial thing, but let's say, I don't know, people want to make money. Let's say I want to make money, and I'm 40 years old, and I didn't. And I haven't made money in my life. Or I want to be in a good relationship, whatever it is. First thing is like, oh, it's this fault, that fault, the other fault. And finally, at some point, you say, okay, but it's really your fault. And then if you really own it, then you start feeling like a loser. Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I in a good relationship? Why am I not making money? Right? And that is where the second problem comes in, which is submission, which is separation.
Separation.
Which is, yes, you've done these choices to create the reality of your life as it is now, but those are things that you did. That's not who you are, and you're actually much bigger than that, much better than that.
I guess that's where mindfulness comes, because we have to recognize, for example, I'm not a body, I have a body.
Correct.
If, for example, you're trying to lose weight, oh, I look terrible. No, you are a soul that has a body, you are not a body. So once we start separating ourselves from that, I have a body, I'm not the body. I have a mind, but I'm not the mind, that's where real mindfulness comes, and that's where people can sweeten it.
Yeah, I mean, mindfulness, presence, being mindful is an essential thing to live any type of, like Yeshua Das, that presence of mind is always.
I find that separation in my personal life, I have to do it through his bodhidut. When I go into a deep meditation, I'll have that. I'll look at the event. I will look at the event, not be like under a rock in the event.
Right.
So I think prayer, what it does is it allows you to not be so attached emotionally to the event. So you don't say, "Oh, I'm angry." No, there's a moment of anger, but without that deep contemplation, you can't do the Havdalah state. You can't separate yourself from the situation because you're too in the situation. And I guess this is where you see today people taking a lot of psychedelics.
Right.
They want to separate themselves from the event, but you can get the same thing through his bodhidut, and you won't throw up.
Yeah, right.
But it takes patience, time, and a lot of effort. But you see, when I've seen in a good prayer,
Right.
I don't see myself in this. I see myself watching the situation, and then once you watch the situation, oh, I can change this without the judgment and beating yourself up, etc.
But I think the word das, which is Yeshiva das, the
Right.
idea of settled mind, da and aid, Kabbalistically are the same, they're actually the same letters, but it means a witness. Which means, das means to observe your life as a witness.
As a witness.
As a witness. I'm observing my life in a detached way, because then I can untangle myself from the problems. Because when you're stuck within life itself, within the trauma
Right.
of life, it's very hard to untangle yourself. But the moment you can step back, you can do it through Bonanus or any type of deeper practice, even in prayer. What you're doing is you're allowing yourself to like observe yourself. And then once you can observe yourself and your story from a detached place, from a witness place, that creates a certain settlement within your consciousness.
Rabbi, the New Age psychology, you said in a podcast that you see modern psychology, the Rashab says, is 50 years ahead of us. That there's somehow all these tools are with modern psychology or with the non-Jews. And I've seen that, for example, you see a big movement today in the future self. Like, people want you, a lot of books on imagine yourself as a future self versus reliving the traumas of the self. What do you think is the best form of therapy today? Again, it's a loaded question,
Now you're getting into a lot of
but
trouble.
I'm trying to put as much questions so we people can get
In
the best.
general, again,
How much should a person focus on his past, and how much should a person try to recreate his future?
a person should never focus on his past, period. The word avera, sin, comes from the word avar, past.
Wow.
Because the past that's masha avar, it's past.
So,
The only place that we live is in the present, right? That's the only place that we're actually really experiencing life. Everything is either memory or fantasy,
wow.
right? So either you're living in the past or the future, but the only real moment is actually me right now having this experience in this present moment. And this is the ultimate expression of the name of Hashem, really, because the name of Hashem is Yud Hey and Vav and Hey, and it's Yud makes the action continuous. Hey Vav Hey is Hoiva, which is present.
Wow.
So Yud Hoiva means the ever unfolding present. If you're really connecting to the highest level of God, it means you're fully present in the unfolding present moment, the eternal moment of now.
Amazing.
And in our life, nothing happens, nothing is gained. I'm not talking about extreme examples, of course. Sometimes there's
Sure.
extreme examples that's because of certain traumas that you're feeling in the present, something a past experience.
Mhm.
But it's much healthier for a person to live in the present moment, being pulled by a possible future than being defined by your past and trying to undo it. Now again, in certain situations, the only way to move forward is to untangle certain things that are pulling us down and holding us back. But if you know yourself, that you can be in this present moment fully alive and engaged in the internal present, forget about the past. Masha Haya, it was us, it was done, it's perfect. There's a place of Yediyah and Bechira, there's a place of choice, and there's a place of Hashem knowing.
Right.
Everything in the past is exactly the way Hashem wanted it to be. Everything.
Wow.
That's why the highest level of tshuva is not to do tshuva.
Right.
No, it's not to do tshuva.
The highest level of tshuva.
The highest level of tshuva, of course. The highest level of tshuva is not to. The highest level of regret is not to regret. The highest
Wow.
level of tshuva is not to do tshuva, because the moment you're doing tshuva, you're saying the thing that I did in the past was actually bad,
Wow, amazing.
but it wasn't. It was exactly what God wanted it
Very
to be.
powerful.
You first have to own it, separate it, sweeten it, and then come to realization that I don't have to do any tshuva for anything of my past, because that's exactly Hashem wanted me to go through that particular challenge,
Wow.
or that particular reality.
That's incredible. Time to let go, everybody. You heard the rabbi. What are we letting go? Wow. So that's how we can let things go without guilt. Because obviously, you see this as there's a lot of shame and guilt, and there's a lot of
All
baggage.
non-Jewish words.
Wow.
Guilt is not a Jewish word. It's
Beautiful.
I know everyone uses Jewish guilt and all these words, but there's
Jewish mothers give the Jewish guilt.
There's no such thing as guilt. Guilt is an inconsistency between something that you've done and something that someone tells you should do. Either you own it or you don't own it.
Wow. That's an incredible message. And that's why I love Hasidus, Rabbi Nachman also. He speaks about getting up 7 times. And he never replayed unfinished business. He never replayed the past.
Of course not.
Rabbi Nachman says in his teachings, he never replayed the past, and even spoke about the greatness of just forget about it therapy. He's saying forgetting is one of the greatest gifts we have, because if you didn't forget things, you could never study the parsha over and over. You could never start a new prayer. The fact that you can forget is one of the greatest gifts that we have. So all this, we're living in a world of resentment, we're living in a world of guilt, we're emotional blackmail. Let it go. Let it go.
Absolutely.
It's easy as that. We are going to take some questions from, everybody's shocked right now about letting it go. Is everybody okay? Do we have to call Hatzalah? Oh, we're good. Yes, you can let go, believe it or not. We're going to take some questions from the crowd.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rabbi, you spoke about the power of visualization, and I wanted to hear from you. What should we be visualizing when we're imagining Geula and what that would actually look like?
Can everybody hear the question? Rina asked, what should we visualize when we are imagining Geula? What practicality should we visualize?
There is 2 ways how to see this. There's the Gula Klalis, the general, the world redemption, which you could visualize, the Beis HaMikdash, the fire. This is like, and it's tzaddikim speak about, other tzaddikim speak about doing this. But I think with regards to every individual person, I think they have to think about the Gula Pratis, their individual redemptive state. What would it look like for you to be operating in your highest level of consciousness all times? How would that be? How would you act in the world? How would you interact with your spouse? How would you interact with your children?
Beautiful.
And I think we have to visualize that. What does it mean? How would I walk into my house? There was a famous Poisek, Rav Zalman Auerbach, big tzaddik, Poisek, older man, and he was in his 90s, and he was about to go into his apartment, and someone saw that he stood in front of the apartment, and he didn't walk in for like 2 minutes. He was making his beard and making sure his dandruff was off. And he said, someone asked him, what are you doing? He says, I'm going to meet my wife. That is
Wow.
to be in your best place. You come home and you're like, you're the prince, and your wife is the princess.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yes.
It wasn't really touched upon, but regarding the war and everything, what are we supposed to do with everyone beating on us on social media and in the world? Are we supposed to speak up like these people on like New York saying, blah 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 blah, don't talk to me like about Israel like that? Are we supposed to be quiet? What's the right way to react to all this hate that's everywhere?
You wanna
You can answer.
part of having a geula, a redemptive, this is from the oil that came down, the teachings that came down from the Baal Shem, the oil of Mashiach, is that a Jew should not be coward ever again. A Jew should never feel like they don't belong ever again. A Jew should never have to run ever again. Because exile means that I'm not in the right place and not in the right time.
Wow.
Redemption means that I am in the right place and I am in the right time. And not only am I in the right place and the right time, but the whole time was created for me to be there and for this encounter to happen. So I think we should never, ever again cower. And if someone spews anti-Semitic statements against you in the street, I think you should slap him, in my opinion.
Hit the gym, that's my answer.
I want to tell you a story, a very quick story. The Baal Shem Tov, one of the greatest Jews that ever lived, once asked in the Heichel, the highest chambers above, who is his companion in Olam Haba, in Gan Eden? Like, everyone has a companion. Like, who's going to be the person that he's going to be in Olam Haba with? So they told him the vision was that if you go into this in the forest and you're gonna meet a Jew there, and that's gonna be your person. And he comes there, and he sees like a big, huge brute, like a real, like a monster-looking guy, like 6'10", 300 pounds.
Right.
And he's like, this is the guy? Oh my God, like I'm like on the lowest level of spirituality possible. And he sleeps with the guy throughout the night. He's waking up, Baal Shem's waking up, he's thinking, like, maybe he's saying Tillim at night, maybe he's a hidden tzaddik. The guy's snoring. And he wakes up the next morning and he cooks himself a huge meal, and the Baal Shem had a real nefilas haruach, like he really felt really terrible about himself. And after a few days, like sitting and watching this person, he realized there's nothing, the guy's nothing. It's like he just eats. He eats and sleeps. So he said, maybe like, tell me something about yourself, like something interesting. He said, I'm not an interesting person, I'm a very simple guy. He says, but tell me, why do you eat so much? Like maybe this is the secret. He said, because, I'll tell you why I eat so much. Because when I was a child, there was a pogrom.
Wow.
And in this pogrom, they took my father. The Cossacks took my father, and my father was a twig. They picked him up, and they threw him in the fire. And he disappeared within a minute. And I swore then that never will any anti-Semite ever be able to pick me up, let alone throw me in the fire without me putting up a fight.
Beautiful.
And that was the Baal Shem Tov's companion for Gan
Beautiful.
Eden.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. Hit the gym, guys. If you look at all those people, they can't even come take out, they're all wearing masks. They're afraid of COVID, they're not even gonna do anything, these bunch of losers. They're all covering up, they all put masks and all that. There's a bunch of cowards.
Absolutely.
You need a Moroccan president, everybody will be finished.
Exactly. I agree with that.
One Moroccan president reminds me, one scream, everybody's finished.
I happen to agree with you. One Sephardic president's all over.
Huh? One good Moroccan president's all you need.
I agree.
Okay. Next question. In the back.
How we do if we are a collective consciousness to avoid that negative thoughts, because we are a collective consciousness, so
Right.
how you do to block that negativity?
This is a good question.
If we are a collective consciousness, how do we block the negativity? Because we're all responsible for each other.
And some people, you can actually receive another person's thoughts.
Right.
But to do that, you have to be in a very sensitive spiritual state. Most people do not pick up other people's thoughts. The tzaddikim speak about during prayer having other negative thoughts, saying, this did not come from me, it came from somebody else. And if it comes from somebody else, and this is very tricky, you have to know whether the thoughts come from you or from somebody else. If it comes from somebody else, what the Baal Shem Tov teaches is the practice of Allah's Amidas, which means the elevation of thoughts. Think about what is the root of that thought, and how could I transform that form of that thought to a different type of form? Because everything has the essence of the thought, and then it has the form of the thought, or the story of the thought. But the essence of the thought is always pure.
Well,
Every core of every emotion is positive. It's always the narrative that's the negative. So if I have a feeling towards something, that's positive. What I want to do with that feeling, or how I'm feeling that feeling, that's already the story, that's the narrative.
that's the imagination.
That's the imagination, that's the narrative, it's the ego.
So the imagination is the narrative.
Correct.
Correct.
But the thing in itself is always
The
pure.
essence is pure.
The essence of everything is pure. So if you're having a negative thought, strip it from this negativity, which is the form of the thought. And let's say it's a thought of aggression, God forbid, or something. But that is also an engine to do something. Like you can use that, like to push yourself, to grow. So you're using that same core without the narrative. And that's how you elevate thoughts.
Right. I, for example, sometimes I'll walk into the energy of a room, I'll see there's a certain stuckness. So you have to open people up, and so that will be the sign that there needs to be opening up.
Correct.
We need to open people up through humor, etc. That will be the energy. Yes.
What would you recommend, or if you would recommend, using Kabbalistic meditations with angelic names to protect one's mind from negative energies?
So what was to use Kabbalistic
No,
meditation?
what would you recommend if somebody would use Kabbalistic names to basically create a bubble around him, or or to protect
You're
themselves.
asking if a person should use divine names?
Can they use divine names, or is this dangerous, or?
I know, like you said, like Shema, you said like above me is to the right, to the
Right.
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 and above me is like two Shemot Hashem.
Yeah.
Why don't people just do that? It's very effective, if you would recommend it.
It's when you're talking about the names, when you talk about the divine names, there has to be a certain type of. You're talking about very delicate spiritual, high level spiritual frequencies, and if you don't do them correctly,
Go with backfires.
yeah, it's actually it's not good. It's actually like holding hot coal. So it works. It's detrimental. So if a person is every person has to know themselves, and I don't want to say blanket statements, but using shameless, using generally sacred names is something that you should be prepared for. It shouldn't be something that's done lightly, if that's something to be done.
Would you say something like Eno Levado is
That's the thing. Ein Levado-
simple enough?
Yeah, Ein Levado is not a name. That's Ein Levado is always.
Right.
Ein Levado breaks everything every time. This is generally, but that's just.
Eno Levado's, the first letters are 111. So, for example, just focus on oneness, that nobody can affect you unless you're giving that energy away.
Yeah, right. But the particular names, the sacred names, is something that
Baal Shem Tov has a sentence, Machshava Lo Tihyeh, which in itself has
is not Masla, yeah.
Right.
which has a certain name that you don't mention, just contemplate.
Correct.
So would that not be?
But that's the name that the Baal Shem Tov revealed. The names that Baal Shem Tov revealed is different. I don't get into like technical things,
Got
but
it.
the names that Baal Shem Tov revealed is very different than what Dari did. The names that Baal Shem Tov wrote are names that you could have intention.
Or
No.
you're picturing yourself in a Maggid David, in a Maggid David.
Okay, that's something else. Yeah, that's right.
something else.
Right, I'm saying, but actually using sacred names, you could use the Baal Shem Tov's names. The Baal Shem has
Got it.
particular names, like Aleph Lamed Aleph. This is the different Agla. These are the names that Baal Shem uses, but I would not use, lightly the other names of Hashem.
Yes, Blanca.
So I started to get a little vocal on social media about like how we need to own being Jewish, and we need to step into prayer. And a friend messaged me on the side and said we should have this conversation not on the public thing, but prayer doesn't help. And I felt like.
Pray for them.
Thank you. I didn't know what to say. And like, do you have any suggestions on like what can we say to a person that doesn't even believe in prayer? Especially now at this time.
If you don't believe in prayer, then prayer is not helpful. The essential ingredient for prayer to work is to believe that it could work. And Muna, faith, is dvekus. Muna is not super rational, extreme. Muna means the experiencing of divine. And when you're experiencing divine in prayer and with trust, you actually draw down that energy into this world. Bitachon, trust, is a proactive activity. Trust doesn't mean I just trust. Trust means that I am drawing down this reality into this world. When you trust in Hashem, you're drawing down this quality of trust into this world, this quality of kindness into this world. And it's the way we draw down into the world protection. But like we said before, every single thing has a recipient and a giver. We have to be
Right.
open to receive it in order to receive it.
And a lot of people have a lot of religious trauma. So
Yeah.
maybe their father told them, pray, you're not praying, wake up and pray. So they're burnt out. So there's a lot of people that are burnt out, and there's a lot of reprogramming that has to be done. And
What can I answer them?
give her space, let her vent it out, and then little by little, they explain to you why do you feel like that, let her talk about it. And then sometimes if there's a space, you could talk about a bad case of food poisoning that they probably had. And you should try a different input. Because many people, even when I was younger, before I got into Rav Nachman, go to synagogue, go pray, there was no feeling and emotion. So they didn't feel that, the vacancy. So try something else, But there has to be a space usually. Yes, I think,
Hi, my name is Ellie DJ. I live here in Aventura. In the beginning of your, Gedale actually asked you a question at the beginning. people, when we see a war going on in Israel, oftentimes people will look at, around them and say, is this happening because these people, because this, or that. And we should really look inward, not look so much outward. So from, like, in a practical perspective, what does that mean for, the average person, and how do we apply that to ourselves?
It's not so much a disconnect between Hashem and us.
Yesod Malchus.
Yesod and Malchus, which means Yesod is the world of perfection. Malchus is the world of is the world of reality. Or we say it differently, Yesod is transcendence and Malchus is immanence. So our immanence, which is the way we live our life, is not connected to our ideals.
Mm.
That's what Yesod and Malchus, the separation is. Like we know things to be true, but we're not living it. So I know this is the way I would like to live, and I know this is the truth of existence, but I'm not living it actually in my practical life.
Not, but you're saying, so the practicality is a lack of faith.
Yeah, we're not actually drawing into our practical life.
So you're saying you would, so pretty much living a comfortable life and basically not getting, no, this, again.
Right. But it's basically, I have an ideal, what I know to be true, and I'm not actually living
Doing
it.
it.
I'm not actually doing it.
Got it.
And so that's why it creates friction in the world.
Right.
That itself creates
Right.
friction, which is war. In our own life, that means to own the truths that we know to be true and to make sure that we're living it. Like if I know, let's say, Eino Milvade, I know that Hashem rules the world and everything is, but then I live with fear. And I'm saying, yeah, Eino Milvade, and I trust that I trust in God. And then I'm saying, but what's going to happen in Israel? And I'm afraid, and there's so many, the billion, and all these negative thoughts. But so there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect between the way you think the truth of it and the way you're actually living. We have to make sure that they're integrated. Take those every single morning when you think about the certain principles of truth and what you think of this idea of Netzach Yisrael, that Klal Yisrael is Nitzchi, is infinite, is eternal, connected to the eternal one. And Hashem is always guiding us, and Hashem always protects us throughout all of history. And we are Hashem's witness in this world, and to live it. And how does it mean in my practical life? How would I live as a Jew in this world today, knowing this truth to be true?
Beautiful. So it's practically living with, like, doing things just without kavanah, without really...
Without too much, because kavanah sometimes...
Or just, like, for example, praying, like, just to get rid of it. Just to do it without...
Right. To just get to the next thing.
Right.
In Yiddish, they
I
say...
find that I think I can...
One of the worst statements in Yiddish, if you speak Yiddish, is ich hab abgedavnt, which means someone says, like, I finished davening already, I finished praying. But in Yiddish, it's abgedavnt means like it's like a chore, and I got rid of it. It's like, I can start my day because I got rid of davening already. What do you got rid of? The whole day is davening. Davening is what you're supposed to be doing. Everything else is just, that's the chore. You're not you're not davening in the morning to get, I didn't get my day started at 9, so let me go to davening before that. Your day is starting with davening.
We were living with an obligation instead of an opportunity.
Correct.
So we put very low effort when things become obligation, where we look at opportunity, and this is, all you need is shalom bayit to wake you up.
Yeah.
For example, a person's, okay, shalom bayit, okay, you know what, I don't know if this relationship's working out for me. Divorce, the opportunity now to make it better. So again, I've always said this, good times bring bad times, and we've seen this through history, Rabbi. We've seen this the Jews had everything in the king with the time of Purim. What happened? Orgy. They got comfortable. King Ahasuerus, bad time. Created a good time. We saw it in Hanukkah. Same thing. We had everything. What happens? They started becoming lax. Good times became bad times, which became good times. So just think about practically in your life, when you start getting comfortable, you're inviting a bad time in. That's pretty much it. I hate to tell it to you so, but that's pretty much it. So being aggressively and having ratzon is much better to serve God through inspiration than through desperation. Because through inspiration, at least you can control the process. Through desperation, there will be a wake-up call. And who knows where the wake-up call is going to come through din. So that's something that I've always had in my mind, that comfort is the beginning of slavery. Because next thing you know, I have to feel the right way to wake up, etc. Yes?